This video is brought to you by Parallel Space. Parallel Space is one of the top ranked tools on Android that allows you to run multiple accounts in different applications by cloning the app. It also has a secure private mode that allows you to install apps and have them hidden under an incognito mode. Feel free to check them out in the link in the description below. Thank you. The Nexus 6P, Google's flagship before the new Pixels, was released a little over a year ago. It shipped with Android 6.0 Marshmallow right out of the box, and you can officially update it to Android Nougat. Since the Google Pixels are among us, I thought it would be a good idea to look back at the Nexus 6P and see if it's still a good buy. So let's get right into it. Now, this device was first unveiled on September 2015. It was the first phone to come with Android Marshmallow out of the box, and currently you can get a 64GB 6P on Huawei's website for $499, and you can get the other variants even cheaper elsewhere. The reason I point this out is because this year price has been emphasized on many phones, and so I'm curious if the 6P can still compete with other phones in its price range, such as the OnePlus 3 and the Axon 7. When I got the Nexus 6P, I was coming from a Nexus 6, a phone that many people thought was way too big to use and hold in one hand. The 6P is still a large phone as well, but it is less wide than the Nexus 6, which makes quite the difference. So size-wise, reaching the top corners may be a little bit difficult, but personally, I never had an issue with it. Now let's talk about the display. With a Quad HD AMOLED display, when this phone was first released, the display was a very big talking point. Google had claimed that the panels that were being used for this phone were Samsung's latest and greatest, and looking at the display today, it still holds up as a really solid display. It has definitely been outdone by some of the flagships this year from Samsung and the new iPhone, but compared to devices in its price range such as the OnePlus 3 or the Axon 7, I would say the display is definitely very good, especially considering devices like the OnePlus 3 are still using 1080p displays. The next thing we see on the front of the device is the dual front-facing speakers, which to me is something that makes a phone so much better. While having loudspeakers is nice, the fact that many phones aren't using a front-facing set of speakers this year is something I do not understand. Having used front-facing speakers starting with my Nexus 6, it's something that I've gotten used to, and it's something that I definitely missed when I used my OnePlus 3. So now let's talk about the biggest selling point of any Nexus phone, the software. The Nexus 6P is rocking Android Nougat, Google's latest OS, and not only that, but the 6P gets monthly security patches from Google as well. The promise of updates and the clean experience of stock Android is the reason many people opt to use Nexus phones. It's one thing the 6P definitely has over all its competitors, as not many Android phones besides the Pixel will probably get any updates before this. Moving on to the camera, this is another thing that the Nexus devices were usually criticized for. However, the Nexus 6P turned that around and had a fantastic camera. The rear camera is a 12.3 megapixel sensor with f2.0 aperture, laser autofocus, a dual LED two-tone flash, and 4K video recording. Now, the lack of optical image stabilization was something many people criticized, but when using the device, unless you're taking video, it's not very noticeable. When this phone was released, the camera was praised because it finally meant that the Nexus series had a camera that could compete with the likes of Samsung phones and iPhones, and due to this already good sensor, it means that it takes great pictures, I would argue even better so than some of its competitors in its price range today. Now let's take a look at some negatives. Where the Nexus 6P comes up short is in processing power and specs compared to phones released this year. Last year, the Android OEMs were forced to use either the 810 or the 808, two chips that disappointed due to the lack of power and thermal problems. In this regard, the Nexus 6P gets beat out by phones like the OnePlus 3 or the Axon 7. This phone doesn't slow down during light usage at all and is still very smooth, but if you like to game intensely or for an extended amount of time, the phone will generate heat and may experience slowdowns because of the thermal problems with the 810. So while this isn't awful, it's definitely not the best compared to phones such as the OnePlus 3 or the Axon 7 that are rocking the Snapdragon 820. Also, the 3GB of RAM does not compare to that of the 6GB available in the OnePlus 3. This also goes for the battery as well. While I wouldn't say the battery life is bad on this device, I wouldn't say it's great either. At 3,450 mAh, this device has decent battery life but is not going to impress. Obviously, the newly updated Doze feature and battery saver from Android Nougat helps squeeze a little more juice into your daily usage, but from my testing, you can expect around 4 hours of screen on time, and with the inclusion of quick charge, you can extend your battery a lot if you're able to reach an outlet for about 20 minutes. A few minor mentions that I didn't want to leave out is that the 6P does not have an SD card and it does not have wireless charging. This may be a deal breaker for certain people, however, personally, having gotten the 64GB model and not really using wireless charging due to the quick charging being better, this doesn't really affect me. With that being said, I still think this is a relevant device, especially with that attractive price tag. At $499, you're getting a huge display with plenty of pixels, semi-decent battery life, front-facing speakers, and a really good camera. And of course, you get the latest version of stock Android as well as the monthly security updates. If you're a smartphone enthusiast but feel like the Pixel is a bit too expensive, I think this phone is definitely worth taking a look at. If you like being amongst the first to get updates, really like front-facing speakers, and taking pictures is a big part of what you do with your phone, then I'd say this is probably the best budget option. Anyways guys, that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to drop a like on this video if you enjoyed it.